Hello guys, today we're gonna talk about the King's Gambit again. Again is because we already started the discussion in this first video, please check it if you haven't yet. And there you wrote me comments that the review wasn't full. Well, of course it's not full in bounds of 10 minutes video. So let's fill it with more variations today. Sharp and aggressive, the favorite and popular King's Gambit. Let's go! So we start this King's Gambit with e4, e5, and we sacrifice this f4 pawn on the king's land. That's why this is called the King's Gambit. And black accept it. They do accept it, and we play the accepted King's Gambit. And let's remember what we've learned before in this first video. We've learned the main ideas of the King's Gambit. The main idea of this f4 pawn sacrifice is to immediately open this f file to attack with the rook. And the second main idea is to quickly open these strong diagonals, also to attack to king with the queen and the bishop, right? And the second main idea is to quickly dominate in the center. So we lure out this pawn, sacrificing our pawn, to immediately take the center and dominate on these e4, d4 squares. But let's first remember what we've learned if we immediately move d4. It's a mistake, because we immediately get this check, queen h4 check, and we cannot defend with g3 because, you know, black just take and we can take, our rook is hanging, and that's the problem for white. We also cannot defend like this, take knight f3, because we also losing this central pawn with a check, and after we defend we even can get this g2, and this is not the game we want to play in King's Gambit. So let's return back a bit and just remember not to play d4 as the third move. We're going to prepare this pawn movement instead with knight f3. And here we also learned the main move for black would be g5. Black want to hold this extra pawn, right? Somebody wrote me that nobody would defend this gambit pawn, but can you see the statistics? 50% of games continued with g5 movement. And also h4 reply is the most popular and the strongest reply here. We play h4. The only good option for black here is g4, tempo, attacking the knight, because otherwise we would destroy this pawn structure, right? So g4, and in this first video we analyzed the variation knight g5, aggressive and adventurous variation. And some of you wrote me that this is doubtful variation because this knight sacrifice leads to nothing. So today we'll check the alternative move, another line, it's knight e5. This move doesn't consider this knight sacrifice. So you can choose. If you want the very aggressive, unexpected, sharp game, you play knight g5 and you sacrifice the knight to f7 point, as we learned in this first video. But if you don't want to sacrifice any pieces, any knights, you just move knight e5, the more reliable variation. There are two main options for black. It's d6 and h5. So we're gonna learn both of them, both of these two, the most popular moves. And let's start with h5. It's more aggressive. It's move where black wants to hold their gambit pawn. What should we do here? This move allows us a tempo. We develop our bishop to c4, attacking the f7 point. And the only defense for black here is knight h6. And we complete our center domination, d4. Here's how we implemented the idea of taking the center. And now, when black want to attack our knight with d6, with natural development move, we have this comfortable d3 square behind our central pawn, knight d3, and we attacking this gambit pawn. We want to take it back, right? And since this pawn is not defendable at all, instead black want to develop and want to take another pawn. We shouldn't be scared with losing this pawn. We just take this gambit pawn, but only with the bishop. Why? Just because when black moves bishop h4, we have this g3 tempo defense. Bishop should retreat, and we just take another h5 pawn. Now look at the board, count the pawns. So we got our sacrificed pawns back, right? But we have very better center. So now this is hanging, they have to trade, and continue their development, and we continue our development either something like this, and we move queen to d2 in order to castle on quickly. So black also going to castle on because here everything is destroyed in the king's flank. After that we have playing position with the great dominance at the center. We like this game, right? And willing to play such positions. Let's return the position, and we just check that h5 doesn't give us any problem. Just remember to take this pawn with the bishop, to take this g3 defense. Let's check another option for black. It's d6. It's more strategic, more reliable move, right? It's natural development move. Now we just take this gambit pawn back immediately, and here if you check the statistics, the most popular reply for black is bishop g4. Most of your opponents would play like this. They would trade the bishop for the knight. Here we just take, of course, with the queen, and appears this pawn have no defense anymore, and we're just going to take it back anyway. Like knight f6, queen f4, and black continue their development. We develop our bishop pinning the knight, and we're just going to trade it. And after some development, this, maybe black want to attack these pawns. We're just going to defend it with d3. We don't need the center anymore because we already have an extra pawn. And after, for example, black want to castle on, we just trade this knight. And we're going to also castle on, and we have good pawn structure, extra pawn, and good development, and it's just winning position for white. That's why, let's return the position again. This the most popular trading move, like after knight g4, the most popular move, bishop g4. We just clap our hands, take this pawn, take another pawn, castle on, make our development, and just consequently, incrementally winning this game. That's why the more correct move here will be the second popular move, knight f6. Of course, we trade here, and we continue our development, knight c3, threatening knight d5, attacking the queen, attacking the c7 point, and the most popular move here, and the most of your opponents would play, c6. Black do not let us put the knight to d5. But if they let us, for example, knight c6, please you don't be in a hurry to put your knight here, knight d5. You should be acknowledged that black is not obliged to move their queen back to defend this pawn. If your opponent is more smarter, they would just move queen g6, attacking this g3 point. And here, if you take this c7 pawn with the fork to king and the rook, black move king d8, and here there are two threats, like the knight is hanging and g3 is hanging. And if you automatically take the rook, you're gonna get this, and yeah, this tricky checkmate in the center of the board. So please don't be trapped like this. Let's return the position and check where we did this mistake. We did it when we immediately moved our knight to d5 point. What should we do instead if black let us move here? We are not in a hurry. we first develop our bishop. We pin this dangerous knight, not letting it move to d4 with this checkmate. And the other idea of this move is to free this f1 square for the king, not to get this checkmate again. For example, bishop d7, black want to get rid of this pin, right? And here we just immediately move knight d5. Now we can do it, because if they move queen g6 attacking g3 point, we just make this fork. Now we can do it. The fork, king d8, we take the rook, and here if black move queen g3 check, we just slide our king to f1 square, which we free, developing the bishop. And here after knight d4, we just trade. And you can see there are no checkmates already. We just scare the queen, and we just scare the knight, and we develop our queen and create our own attack with the extra rook. Here's we winning. So in this position, if your opponent allows you to move your knight to this square, don't be in a hurry. First you should develop your bishop to pin this knight and to free the square for the king. And after that, you can just move your knight to this good square. But in the most cases, on your knight c3, your opponent wants to take the control over this d5 square. The c6 is the most popular move here. And after c6, our main plan will be to take back this gambit f4 pawn. In order to do this, we move our queen forward, queen f3, and after rook g8, there are attacking options like rook g3 or bishop g4. To avoid it all, we just slide our queen to f2. This is not obvious route with the queen, just remember it, queen f3 and queen f2. We pressure in f4 pawn and we put our queen safe from all attacks. Black want to hold this pawn, bishop h6, we take the center, finally d4, our main gambit's plan to take the center, and continue attacking this pawn. There are 2 attacks and 2 defense yet, and for example after bishop g4, we move knight e2. One more attack for this pawn. Black should trade this, because otherwise the pawn is hanging. Trade. Now black are sure they defended this pawn with these 2 defense against the 2 attacking pieces, and they continue their development, but here they are not ready for the surprise. g4. Just take a pause and try to analyze why is it possible. Yes, because black thinks they have this en passant, but if they do it, we just trade the queens and black loses the bishop. So this is the mistake. Fg is the mistake. That's why they cannot take en passant. And the next move will be g5 for sure. We maybe will not win the piece, but this pawn we will take back for sure. And now just look at the position. We're gonna play g5, for example, somehow queen g6, we play g5, we take this pawn with the bishop maybe. We have these defended pawns, we have these central pawns, we have an extra pawn and the bishop's pair. The position is winning for white again. So today we learned about another option on King's Gambit, like e4, e5, f4 take, knight f3, g5, h4, g4, it's like required moves. And in the first video we learned this knight g5 with this knight sacrifice sharp game, and today we learned another option, knight e5 without the knight sacrifice, more strategic game. And after h5 defending the pawn move, we developed our bishop pressure into f7, and after that attacking this gambit pawn and getting the active game. On the more correct d6, we took this pawn back, and after the most popular trade, we took it, and then we took this pawn, and we just have an extra pawn. On the more correct move, knight f6, we trade, and we move our queen like this, queen f3, queen f2, continue attacking this pawn, which is at the end is not defendable. So try to play this variation of King's Gambit and write your comments.